Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to our Fulbright webinar today, focusing on scholarships and law in the social sciences. I'm Sara West, the Executive Assistant here at the Fulbright Commission in Ireland. I'd like to welcome all of our panel of speakers, as well as our attendees joining us today. It's wonderful to see such interest in Fulbright opportunities for those in law and social sciences, and we're delighted to be with you today. We have a spectacular lineup of accomplished Fulbright alumni speakers for you today. I will just turn off my video now to maximize my internet connection here. So you'll just see the Fulbright logo. And now I will introduce our wonderful speakers to you, and they will say a quick hello. We are going to hear from Ruth Cormichan, who is Legal Secretary at Llm Solicitors, LLP, and a 2016 Fulbright Notre Dame Human Rights Llm Awardee.
Hi, everyone.
Then we will hear from Dr. Brenda McNally, who is a research fellow at the Department of Geography at Trinity College, Dublin, and was a 2019 Fulbright GSI Scholar to the Center for Science and Imagination at Arizona State University.
Hi, hello.
And last but not least, we will hear from Professor Orla Muldoon, who is founding professor of psychology in University of Limerick and a 2020 Fulbright Scholar to Kansas University.
Hello, everyone.
We are also joined today by Fulbright Communications Manager Emma Lockney.
Hi there.
And Awards Manager Sonia McGuinness.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you all. You are very welcome. All of our alum speakers have had diverse experiences on their Fulbright scholarships in the USA, and they will be sharing their invaluable insights and tips with us today. There'll be an opportunity to speak, to ask questions, after the panelists speak using the chat box feature here on Zoom. But attendees, you can type your questions in the chat box throughout our discussion today, and we'll put the questions to the speakers at the end of our session and try to get through as many as we can. If you have any specific questions about application dates, eligibility criteria, etc., please do visit our website, www.fulbright.ie, where all of this info is readily available in our FAQs section. And we will have a special webinar that comprehensively runs through all of the application process on the 17th of September, which I highly recommend that you register for on our website as well. And you can, of course, reach out to our awards managers at awards@fulbright.ie to ask questions there at any time. But today is going to be an opportunity to hear straight from all our alumni speakers who have experienced these awards firsthand and to get their personal insights. So please direct questions today to them in the chat box. I won't be going through the application process as mentioned, but I will give you a very brief overview of the Fulbright Award opportunities available to you before handing over to our speakers today. Emma, if you would kindly share the presentation. No problem.
No, you should have them there.
Wonderful, yes. Great. So if you just want to switch to the next slide there, what you're seeing here is an outline of the application timeline. So we'll just go through that briefly now. If you're interested in applying for a Fulbright Award in 2021, 2022, the application process is now open. It opened on the 31st of August, and the application period will remain open until the 2nd of November. If you're interested in applying for this round of awards, the earliest you can begin your award is August 2021. So then between November to December 2020, reviews of applications will take place. And then if you are shortlisted for interviews, interviews are held January to February 2021, and offers are usually made in March. So in terms of planning your application, we highly recommend you start reviewing the information on our website. There's a wealth of information there, so it would be a great place to start, especially the FAQ section. Then you will choose an award you want to apply for. And I'm going to go briefly through the award categories in a moment. The next step is to find a course, depending on if you're interested in doing a master's or a PhD, and plan your proposal for your research, or if you want to lecture. And then reach out to host organization contacts in the US where you're interested in going. Then it's very important to make sure that you research what it means to be a Fulbrighter by reviewing the Fulbright Ethos. This is really essential to your application. Fulbright is not just an academic exchange, but a cultural exchange. And I'm sure our alumni will touch a bit on this today. If you're interested in applying for an award, you can register your interest now on our website, and one of our award managers will be in touch with step-by-step instructions for the Irish application process. If you just switch there, thank you. Regarding the Irish Fulbright Award categories, there are 5 categories from which you can choose to apply. The first category here is the Irish Student Awards. Irish Student Awards are for postgraduate research degree programs. Then we have the Irish Scholar Award category for academic or professional research or lecturing. The Irish Tech Impact Awards are also for academic or professional research with a focus on information and communication technology. Then there's the Irish FLTA Awards, which are for teaching the Irish language and to take courses. And the final category is the Fulbright Schumann Awards, which are run by the Fulbright Commission in Belgium, but are open to Irish and EU citizens. And lastly, just to highlight that the Irish Student and Scholar Award categories are open to all disciplines, and that students, researchers, scholars, and professionals from law and social sciences can apply to any host institution they wish. Then just switching to the next slide, these 4 categories here are the ones that may be most relevant to law and social sciences, which would be the Irish Student, Scholar, Tech Impact, Fulbright Schumann categories. Students, researchers, scholars, and professionals from law and social sciences could apply to all 4 of these categories. The Irish Student Awards are for a duration of 4 to 12 months, and the Scholar Awards are for a range from 3 to 12 months. Meanwhile, Tech Impact Awards are a shorter term, ranging from 6 weeks to 3 months. And if you were interested in applying for a Tech Impact Award, so just to note here that you would need to be examining how tech may be applied within your field. We've had a diverse range of Tech Impact awardees with backgrounds spanning from language to science and social studies. And as mentioned, the Fulbright Schumann Awards are run by the Belgian Commission, but are open to Irish and other EU citizens. So to be eligible for this award, your proposal should have an EU-US focus. Just to note as well that these awards run on a different application period, running from today, September 15th, 2020 to December 1st, 2020. Then as well, the opportunity to apply for all disciplines student scholar awards. In addition to that, candidates with a social science background may consider applying to a number of these sponsored awards that are listed here and on our website. So you can apply for open all discipline awards, but do bear in mind that there is specific funding allocated to each of these awards every year. So it may be worthwhile applying to a specific sponsored award if relevant to your study or work. There may be less people applying to these specific awards than to the all discipline. So there's quite a lot of options here. And then just in particular for law students and professionals, we do have a number of specific LLM awards. For instance, the LLM to Indiana University's Maurer School of Law offers a full tuition waiver. The Llm Award to Notre Dame in general law subjects and the International Human Rights LLM both offer full tuition waivers. Meanwhile, the Llm Award to Penn Law School offers a $30,000 tuition waiver. And so some of these sponsored awards, you have a specific host institution, while for other sponsored awards, you can still choose where you'd like to go, like the EPA or GSI awards. And for the all disciplines, you get to choose your host institution. And there are a number of ways you can choose a host institution if you have not yet decided where you might want to go. So for most of our awards, you'd be reaching out to the host institution of your choosing, anywhere in the US. And a step to get started may be to reach out and research the experts in your field. You could talk with your lecturers and colleagues about places that may be of interest. And bear in mind, please, that the Commission welcomes diversity in terms of organizations and geography across the United States. And you may reach out as well to Irish and US Fulbright alumni. Our speakers today will be talking about how they made their host institution choices. And also feel free to use Fulbright links that we have through our sponsored awards. We have a number of these awards with institutions in the US. So if the institutions are of interest, even if the specific awards may not be relevant to your area of research, you may still wish to connect. And of course, you may also reach out to your mentors and consider their advice. Overall, just about being proactive and creative, taking initiative to make connections. And so lastly, in terms of next steps following this webinar, we highly encourage you to review the eligibility criteria and FAQs on our website, fulbright.ie. On our site, you can then register your interest in the award category of your choice. And you may wish to watch our other videos and webinars on our YouTube channel for more information as well. And certainly do sign up for our webinar on the application process to be hosted at 1 p.m. on September 17th, where we'll dive way more into all of the application nitty-gritty. So that is enough from me. I will now hand over, thank you, Emma, to our first speaker, Ruth Cormichan. Ruth, if you'd like to
Hi, can you hear me there?
slides? Yes, we can.
1 second, I'll just pull the screen down. Hello everyone, it's nice to virtually meet you all. I just have some slides. They're really, there's no content on these really, it's just some photos to give you an idea of a kind of a flavour, I suppose, of what the experience was like for me. I was applying this time 5 years ago, and I did the Fulbright Student Award that's offered in conjunction with the University of Notre Dame, as Sonia just mentioned. So I did the LLM that's specifically in international human rights law, and I did the master's in the 2016 to 2017 academic year. So obviously that was pre-COVID. So the experience, I suppose, maybe slightly different now, but hopefully things will be able to go ahead fairly normally. So, and also I think it was just mentioned there that there's also a general LLM award that's being offered by Notre Dame through Fulbright at the moment. I didn't do that program myself, but I did know some people who were on it at the time. So if anybody has questions about the general LLM award, I'm happy to try and help out with those as well. So when I was applying to Fulbright, I was still in the final year of my undergrad at NUIG. So I had kind of a strong academic record. I had sort of spent a year on Erasmus, so I had some language skills, done kind of internships and volunteering with organisations that were working in human rights and public interest law. And I'd also been very involved in kind of the university society. So that was kind of the basis that I had for making the application. And in terms of what I've done since then, so I graduated in the summer of 2017. And then I came back to Ireland for a few months to work on research with the Irish Centre for Human Rights back in Galway. That was actually, that I got funding to do that through the law school in Notre Dame, which is another one of the advantages of this award, that they do have funding to do internships in kind of with organisations working in human rights. That can be very helpful just as a bridge to get from the master's to wherever you want to go next. Or if there's a particular organisation that you're interested in working for, it's a good way of kind of getting your foot in the door places. So I was there for a few months. Then I spent a year working with the Department of Foreign Affairs in Geneva. So any of you who are particularly interested in human rights, that you may have seen these positions advertised periodically. Essentially, you're working on the human rights team at Ireland's permanent mission to the UN in Geneva. Sorry, should be scrolling through my slides. So that's kind of Ireland's representation to the UN human rights bodies in Geneva. So the Human Rights Council and the UN treaty bodies and that kind of thing. So I was there for a year, and then after that I decided that I wanted to actually qualify to practice law. So I'm back in Ireland now and in the process of qualifying as a solicitor. And then again that was a decision that was quite inspired by a lot of the people that I knew in the LLM program. A lot of the other people on my course were people who were practicing lawyers in their home countries and had a lot of experience at the domestic level working in human rights and public interest law. So for me, I just felt that I wanted to get that professional skill set as well as the academic background that I got through Fulbright and through the LLM program. And my training contract now is going to be with a firm that's working in criminal law and kind of human rights and public law. So that's the medium to long-term plan, I suppose. The next thing that I was asked to talk about is how I chose the award and the institution. It just was a little bit easier for me than it is for some Fulbright applicants, because I was looking at the specific sponsored award in international human rights law. I knew that was the area that I was interested in, and then this particular LLM award had kind of a lot of attractions to me as well. Obviously, it's very well regarded. It is an excellent program, and it's been in existence for a long time now. So it has a very big alumni network, which can be very helpful when you're starting to look at how you're going to transition into the professional world afterwards. Particularly from the time I was in Geneva, I just you would meet people who had been on this program all over the place, working in NGOs and in UN human rights bodies. A lot of them go on to academia as well. So it's the alumni network is very helpful. I was also very interested in some of the particular modules that were offered through the LLM program. So one of the areas that I'm interested in is business and human rights. So they had, at the time anyway, the courses may have changed since then, but they had a very strong module in that area at the time. And Doug Castle, the professor who taught it, was a particularly, well, he's unfortunately retired since then, but he is a very renowned expert in that area, and he was genuinely one of the best teachers that I've ever had. So having the chance to study under him was another very strong attraction of the program. And then finally, I suppose, as I already mentioned, this Llm Award has a very strong focus on practice and on kind of practicing human rights law domestically. So it's not primarily an academic program. It's very much about bringing lawyers to the LLM program to give them the skill set to go back and practice law in their home countries. And then sorry, I'm forgetting to scroll through the slides. Apart from that, there are opportunities that if you get onto the program, there are opportunities that you will get there that you won't even know about in advance. So I got to do a moot court competition while I was there, looking at kind of freedom of expression issues. I got to work as a rapporteur of an expert meeting on business and human rights that was being hosted by the university. There was a seminar with Dennis McDonough, who was one of President Obama's chiefs of staff, who spoke to kind of a small group of us about various kind of public policy and foreign affairs issues. All sorts of things. Ruth Bader Ginsburg came to give an address while I was there. So there's just, it's such a prestigious and such a renowned institution that there are these sorts of opportunities that you will get there that you may not even know about in advance. So yeah, a few more photos. None of this is particularly important, but then highlights of the award since I came back. The main thing that I have noticed is that every interview that I've done since I graduated, one of the first things that people will say to me is that they see that I was a Fulbright awardee and that I studied in the US on a Fulbright award. And the jobs that I have been applying to, haven't primarily been academic jobs. So that is one thing that has continued to strike me, is that this really means something, and that if people can see that you've done this, it does matter a lot in terms of where you're looking to go next. I certainly don't think that I could have gotten the job that I did in Geneva if it hadn't been for the Fulbright experience and the LLM. I also got to publish an adapted version of my LLM thesis afterwards in a legal journal. And it's just, again, the alumni network is going to be very helpful to you if you're interested in working in international law and human rights. The contacts that you get through this program are really, really very helpful. The last thing that I was asked to talk about was tips for the application. I think Sonia probably touched on some of this already. The main piece of advice that I got when I was preparing my own application, which was really helpful, is in terms of when you're framing the application, it's very helpful to think of Fulbright as kind of the bridge from where you are now to where you want to go, particularly if you're looking at one of the student awards. You need to kind of shape it all as showing how everything that you've done up until this point makes you the right candidate for this award. And then beyond that, how you're going to use this particular program and the Fulbright experience to get to where it is that you want to go in the future, and to get to the future career that you have planned for yourself. The second thing that I would say, and this is particularly, I suppose, for people who are interested in the human rights LLM, the mistake that I made a lot in the early drafts of my application is that it's not enough really to talk about kind of having a passion for human rights broadly, or kind of wanting to work on on public interest issues and that kind of thing. Obviously that's very important, but it's the sort of thing that anybody who's applying can say. You need to be able to show something that makes you as an individual the right candidate for this program, and you also need to be able to show why this particular program is the one for you. Now that could be any number of things. It could be that there are particular modules that you're interested in studying. It could be a particular professor that you want to study under. It could be the direction that you want your career to go in after the LLM, but you need to have something. You can't just want it to be about wanting to study human rights generally. There are hundreds of LLM programs out there in human rights law. So you need to know why this particular program, why the Fulbright experience, why Notre Dame. I think that will help to strengthen the application a lot. And then finally, this was mentioned already, I think, but it should really be using the application as an opportunity to tell your story as an individual. People will tell you over and over again, but it's really true. This isn't just about an academic experience. It is about kind of having a cultural experience. It's about kind of showing leadership. It's about giving back both to your host community and in your community back in Ireland. So really, you need to be showing throughout that you are a well-rounded person, and that you're not just going to use this to kind of lock yourself up in the library or the lab or wherever. You need to kind of be looking at it as a broader experience than that. So I think that's kind of the main points that I had to say. If anybody has any specific questions, I've put that's my personal email address there. Please, if you're interested in Notre Dame or particularly in the Human Rights LLM, please feel free to email me with any questions and I'll do my best to help out. And if there's any particular questions for me, I'm happy to answer those at the end.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Ruth. That was so informative and so great to hear about all the unexpected opportunities that arose and what it meant when people noticed that you had this Fulbright name attached and the weight of that. So thank you so much for sharing that. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Brenda McNally. Brenda, if you'd like to take the reins.
Great. Hi. Hello, everyone. It's great to have the opportunity to talk about my Fulbright experience, which is probably a little unusual in that I went to America in January 2019 or 2020, and I was fully expecting to do a 6-month stay in America, but as we all know, COVID happened. So 3 months in, I was faced with a huge dilemma as, will I stay or will I go? As all, this travel and this whole thing was kind of up for consideration in the middle of a pandemic. So I cut my experience short, but actually, this makes me, really want to say to you, it's a great opportunity, and I really, really encourage you to consider it, because I had such a fantastic time in the short time I was there, and it has really fired my enthusiasm for returning when I can. And of course, the Fulbright scholarship is one way in which you will get to go to America. So I was an Irish Scholar Award, and I went to Arizona State University to the School for Future Innovation in Society, and within that school is a small department called the Center for Science and Imagination. I'll just tell a little bit about my background, where I'm coming from as a scholar, because I'm slightly different to Ruth's story, and then I'll get into why I went to that institution. So I'm an environmental communications researcher, and I specialize in the theory and practice of citizen engagement. And I'm particularly interested in the ways in which media and culture shape our understandings of and responses to climate change and energy transition. So for example, I've just recently completed an EPA research which has looked at citizens' views on climate action in Ireland. And for that, I focused on people's media use and information seeking. So where are they getting their ideas and their information about climate action? And so that looked at how we are engaging with climate change in our daily lives, as opposed to some designed participatory event. And so for my Fulbright scholarship, what I wanted to do was explore more creative approaches to engaging citizens. And so I looked at how we might use creative methods for engaging stakeholders with energy transitions. And that's because my scholarship was sponsored by the Geological Survey of Ireland, who are very interested in geothermal energy and public engagement with geothermal energy as part of their involvement with the climate action in Ireland. So with all that in mind, I was really interested in the Future School for the School for Future Innovation in Society in Arizona, and specifically the Center for Science and Imagination, because they are really looking at innovative approaches to designing citizen engagements. And the scholars there are just really leading the field in blue skies thinking and thinking out of the box, as opposed to just a focus on behavior change and individuals and consumer engagement. They've really spent, you know, a number of years thinking about how we can change, particularly in Arizona, the forms of energy use that they're doing. And they're particularly involved with solar energy, but not far from Arizona, up in Utah, and I think Colorado, they have geothermal energy there too. So I was really able to engage with scholars who are practicing at the moment how we can use ideas such as imaginaries, futures thinking, foresight design workshops, these kind of very creative approaches to engage stakeholders, policymakers, local authorities, or a whole wide range of groups in thinking about this big energy transition that we have to undertake as part of our own climate action here in Ireland. So I really wanted to go there and embed myself in the kind of approaches and thinking that these scholars had. And it was just an amazing experience to be in a department of people, not just one person in a department, but a whole school and a department of people who are really focused on these imaginative and creative approaches. And I got to have many conversations and hear about so much work in these face-to-face, one-to-one conversations, which you can read a paper and you can read their book, but to get to speak to them and to be part of workshops, to be part of their various programs that they were doing, it was just it really embedded in me these ideas that I might have taken theoretically, but that was a big highlight for me. Again, same as Ruth, these unexpected, that I didn't know beforehand, workshops and meetings and public talks that would just go on as part of everyday life in an American institution. So that's why I chose CSI and the Future School for Innovation. There was a couple of scholars, as Ruth had mentioned there, or has been previously said, there was a couple of scholars who were experts in the field that I had thought were really interesting to contact. And I did contact them in advance and told them about the kind of work I was interested in doing. And they fully supported in advance of my application, that I might come and stay with them and learn more about what they do. So that's one tip that I would say is, do try and get in touch and build up a relationship with these people that you want to work with in advance of your application, so that they're really on board and you can kind of show that. And as Ruth has just sort of mentioned, that then hones your thinking down so that you're not speaking in the general about what you want to do, that you're really, really specific. And I think that's the point about making your application very interesting, is that it shows that you really thought through this application and where you want to go and why you want to do it and who you're going to work with and what you feel you might get out of it. And I had a fantastic time there, as I said. My plan was to then move on to Colorado and then on to Washington, and that was part of the reason why I felt perhaps I should come back at the 3-month point, because it just didn't seem like a good idea to travel around America at that point. But as I would say, reflecting on it, I just think it's a fantastic opportunity. Scholars there are, doing incredible work. They do very different work to what we're doing here, and to get that chance to collaborate with them and learn from them is just incredible. So some of the highlights then outside of that was, as part of my Fulbright program while I was there, I was fortunate enough to do one of the Fulbright Enrichment seminars, and they invite all the Fulbright scholars who were there at that moment to this meeting. So I went to Kansas and just met up with scholars from all sorts of backgrounds, science, humanities, arts, design, who were in America at that time, from all over the globe. And it really was a fantastic experience to meet this great big group, this family of Fulbrighters who were there at the time. and that really brought home the cultural aspect of the program, you know, to get that opportunity to have that, not only meet with American scholars, but scholars, you know, this international family that the Fulbright is too. And it was a fantastic, you know, long weekend. And I have remained in contact with all of those scholars too. Well, not all of them, the ones that I did get to know. So that was a really important opportunity. I also, because I knew I was doing a 3-part Fulbright, chose to, you know, take every effort to see the area I was in. I mean, I was really, really passionate about going to Arizona and Phoenix and encountering the desert, which might seem a strange thing, but it really did appeal to me. And so I made every opportunity from the get-go to travel. So I got to see the Grand Canyon, I got to visit Sedona, I went to the Navajo territories, up to Utah a little bit, to Tucson. And so I think I was really lucky that I did that, because quite often people leave their traveling till the very end. So I felt like I had very much an academic, research-oriented experience, but also very much a cultural experience. And I suppose if I was to think of a unique highlight, I have seen many sunsets in my life. I've traveled a lot, but I have to say that a desert sunset now ranks as my #1 sunset that you might get to see. But coming back to the academic bit, a real highlight was, as I said, meeting some of those academic colleagues. And I was really, really moved by the extent to which they bring in the social and the ethical to their research. And it might not be something that you might think in terms of environmental communication and America, but they really, really did bring home that. And it has really transformed my thinking about environmental communication at a very deep level. And I hadn't perhaps expected that even from an academic perspective. But that was something that really has stood with me, and I've broadened my thinking not only to think creatively about engagements, but also an awful lot more about the ethical aspects and that type of thing as well. So finally then, in terms of tips, I can only reiterate what Ruth said, absolutely, as I've mentioned. So to build on what Ruth said then, in terms of, not just framing your proposal in the general and just wanting to generally go somewhere, to be specific and have a very clear idea of how this will be of value, how this visit to this institution with this project will be of value to your career and where you want to go. I suppose I would add then, perhaps, is to think about how you can show why you're passionate about going there, why you're so enthusiastic about it. Might be something to think about in terms of framing your project, and to not forget that cultural aspect, that there is that dual aspect, and I think that's where you can bring in why you're enthusiastic about going. So I think that's really all I can say, other than to add again, like it's a really fantastic opportunity. It has spurred my interest in returning there as soon as I possibly can, and I thoroughly encourage you to consider making an application.
Thank you so much, Brenda. It's really amazing to hear all about what you were able to do with the time that you had there despite COVID, getting into culture with the international Fulbright family and your American collaborators, and plus those in-person collaborations and the impact of relationships, not only in your award, but also in the application process. It was great to hear. Thank you. Last but not least, we're going to hear now from Professor Orla Muldoon. Orla, you have a few slides you'd like to share?
Yep. Although I shouldn't be trusted with technology, I'm going to try and do it. Okay, is it working? Can you see anything? Yeah, you can. Excellent. Okay, well, hello everyone. I'm very happy to talk to you today. I'm probably closer to the application process than maybe some of the other speakers, because I was due to be in the US at the moment, so I went through the application process last year, and COVID has rained on my parade a little bit, but I'm still hoping that I will be going to the States early in the new year. So just Fulbright gave us a little brief of sort of things that might be useful. So I'm going to say a little bit about myself. So I applied to the Fulbright Scholars Scheme. I'm a political psychologist, as the Americans would say. I'm a social psychologist, as the Europeans would say. And even though I've had a lot of contact with US academics over my career, I would characterize it as reasonably superficial, and certainly never have had, you know, collaborations with maybe more than one or two people. And I've always been struck by the difficulties of trying to engage across the boundaries in psychology between Europe and the US. So it's almost as if people are speaking in two different ways. So my field is the impact of adversity, so how people cope with adversity. So in the pre-COVID application, I imagined myself to be going out to work with somebody who was interested in race relations in the US. And I have done work on the impact of political violence and gender-based violence here in Ireland and the UK. So I was interested in sort of how those perspectives would merge. We're all now very interested in how the sort of adversity of COVID is affecting us all. I had been to the US before. During my PhD, I had done a statistics and methods program in the University of Michigan. So I had spent time in the States. But I suppose I'm at a different stage of career to certainly Ruth. And as life went by and I was getting more and more jobs from my paid employer and more family responsibilities, it became difficult to travel. And I think that happens to a lot of people as they go through academic life. So a big thing for me was that I, for the first time, felt as if I could actually go to the States. So I had my eye on Fulbright for a while as to something that I would like to do. But this year represented a year that I could actually do it. I had a brief sabbatical in Australia in 2017. So it coordinated with my daughter's transition year. So she's now gone off to college. This year would have coordinated with my son's transition year. So it's difficult to take kids out of school and all the rest of it, but TY, of course, it's ideal to take them out of school. So we were going to head off, the two of us, and we still hope to do so in January. So I would say in my field, most of the really impactful work in social psychology or political psychology is done in the USA. I would say that the impact of psychological research coming out of the US is probably 5 times more than anywhere else in the world combined. But there are times, and I'm involved in an international network of political psychologists, there are times that even though I can see my US colleagues' mouths moving, I'm not really sure what it is that they're getting at, because some of the way we talk about things are so different and some of the way we think about things are so different. So I really wanted to go to kind of get that, to get how culture and ideology can infiltrate psychology. So I approached somebody who was kind of somebody I knew through somebody else who was a big name in the field. And I was kind of a little bit nervous about approaching this person because I had met her once in passing. But as well as, so she's in Kansas, as well as knowing her work very well, there was a group in Kansas, and like the psychology department in Kansas is about 5 times the size of the psychology department in University of Limerick. So there's 20 of us. The psychology department in Kansas has 110 people. So as well as her, there was other people in that group that were doing really, work that I would just love to get myself involved in. So I felt I was really kind of cheeky and almost putting myself out there more than I would normally to make contact with her. And I did that in part because I felt it would create a challenge. I didn't want to put myself and my kids through this unless we were going to get, you know, something really interesting back. So I guess what was really surprised me from early on was how positive the response was once I made contact with the people in Kansas. They could not have done more to help me. And still, like, are really, you know, at one point they said, well, if you can't come, you know, on the Fulbright, maybe we'll figure out some other way. You know, they really have been great. They have read the application. They pointed out things even at this stage that could be changed. When COVID started, the head of department said maybe you should change the work you were going to do and start engaging with the pandemic. When the Black Lives Matter kicked off, you know, again, we re-looked at the application, and so really very engaged from the beginning. So in some regards, I felt even if I hadn't gotten the Fulbright, I probably have had a win, because I had now a very clear connection to this woman who was very clearly keen to work on what I was doing. So I would say the application in and of itself is probably useful. Not in the day you don't get it, obviously you don't feel that, but you know, it is it is in and of itself useful, I think. The other thing that I thought was very useful was having to write your story down and why it was you wanted a Fulbright and why you wanted a Fulbright now. I'm one of these people that tends to sort of just puddle through life, and you know, if it happens, it happens. But I don't necessarily stand and think about, you know, or create a narrative, but actually I kind of surprised myself that there was one there that I could do past self and current self and future self, and that was a bit of a relief. But it is useful to get that down. And again, the people in Kansas read all that, and when I was getting the application ready. So now, after the process, again, I would say that Fulbright have been great. And even though we've obviously been stalled because of COVID, we're still getting plenty of contact from Fulbright. You know, it's very clear that we're still being supported to go. The collaboration, I would say, has started already. So that, you know, that's something that, because the Fulbright has been awarded, I'm now treating it as if I'm there. Clearly I'm not, I'm in Limerick. But I think that it does allow you to engage with the collaborators, because of course they're all at home too, and they're all very happy to have contact with the outside world. So I mean, that there's actually quite a good exchange already. I did let my sort of network of people in political psychology know when I was awarded the Fulbright, and actually it's incredible the number of people, when you say, oh yes, I'm hoping to come in a Fulbright, they just get invitations thrown, you know, well, can you come to Boston? Can you come to California? Can you come? So there's actually quite a number of people who've made contact to ask if I will go visit. So obviously, if there's no restrictions in place, I will be more than happy to do that. So I would say the process is reasonably straightforward, and there's something to be gained just from the process. In terms of contacts and in terms of your own visibility as an academic. So that's all I have to say.
Orla, thank you very, very much. Great to hear that you're beginning to feel like you're doing your Fulbright even while you're still here. And, you know, just for even hearing about your exercise in narrative, going through the process of reflecting on your story and connecting with your hosts even before you're there, and that relationship building, all about the exchange. So thank you. And now we have some time for questions. So we'll bring in all of our speakers, our communications manager, Emma Lockney, and our awards manager, Sonia McGuinness. So feel free to write in the chat box. We have a few come in already. And just a reminder that if there's any nitty-gritty application questions, we have our 17th of September webinar coming up. So that will be an excellent opportunity to explore all of that. But today, if there's anything you want to directly ask the speakers to offer their insights about their Fulbright realities, we can go for that. So Emma, if you'd like to speak to any questions on our speakers as well.
Thanks to all the speakers, it was really interesting. There are just a couple of questions in that are a little bit about the application, but I can just cover them really quickly. Just somebody asking, could they apply again? They've applied to the UK Commission before. Yes, you can apply to the Irish Commission if you've applied to us before, or if you've applied to any other commission before, that's fine. Once you have, you're eligible for the Irish Awards, once you're an Irish citizen or EU citizen who's lived in Europe for the last, a European citizen who's lived in Ireland for the last 3 or more years. So we would encourage you to apply again. There have been many people in the past who haven't got it the first time, but have got it the second or even third time they apply. So don't let that put you off. I know you have to ask for references and things again. But it's worth the effort. You know, it has come through for people before. Another question was, will a 2-1 in undergraduate degree suffice for eligibility? Yes, this is on our website. If you have a 2-1 in your undergrad or a subsequent degree, that's fine. And then there was another question about, does Fulbright provide a monthly stipend for student awards, and will it cover your tuition costs? So it is a monthly stipend that is dependent on your application, where you're going, cost of living, and where you're going geographically, how long you're going for. It will not cover full tuition for a $50,000 to $60,000 degree program, so you need to bear that in mind. That's why it's really important to look at the partner institutions like Notre Dame and Mauer and Penn, you know, for the LLMs, for example, that do offer some tuition waiver or partial tuition waiver for Irish awardees, for Fulbright awardees in general, in some cases as well. So that's something really important to bear in mind, because the maximum award would probably not cover you know, the full tuition for a taught master's program in the States, because they are expensive. So I think we have some questions here as well coming in for the speakers. There was one for Ruth, I think, specifically. Now let me see if I can find it here, because there's a good few coming through. Do you see it there, Sarah?
I can read it out there. Yes, this question is addressed to Ruth. It seemed that from your presentation that you've changed your mind or developed your intention as to where you want to end up in your career, having been at the UN, NGOs, and now going into legal practice. In a similar way, while I have a clear idea of the area of law I want to pursue, I am still unsure and considering my options regarding the type of legal profession I want to pursue. My question is, how do specifically you think our professional long-term goals need to be in our application?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I would say the Fulbright experience, I think, helped me to zero in a lot more specifically on where I wanted to go long-term in my career. And I think it's part of the challenge of, if you are interested in a career in human rights law and international law, it is a very broad field, and there are a lot of directions that you can go in within that. So that can be quite overwhelming, particularly when you're still in university and you're trying to work out, you know, what career paths to take and what particular issues you want to work in. Even at the time that I was applying for the Fulbright, I was interested in getting a professional qualification. And again, that was part of the appeal of the Notre Dame program, that it is very much targeted towards practicing lawyers and towards people who are interested in practicing law domestically, rather than people who are more maybe interested in moving into the academic world. But I was also and remain very interested in engaging in kind of international work as well. So that was why immediately after the master's, I went into the job in Geneva, which was very useful in terms of getting kind of a perspective on the international human rights law world, because Geneva is really the heart of all that. And I think really the LLM experience really made it very clear to me that I did want to get the professional qualification. I think, for me anyway, I feel that I will have more to offer when I am kind of a qualified professional lawyer. So I do hope to move back into the international arena, but I think it is useful, at least for me, in terms of where I want to go, it is useful for me to get kind of that professional qualification in addition to the academic experience. So that's a very roundabout way of answering the question. But basically, yes, I think I've zeroed in more specifically on where I want my career to go in the long term, but it is broadly the way that I saw myself going in the Fulbright application. I think it's helpful to be somewhat specific about where you want to go, if there are particular issues you want to be working in the future, or a particular career path that appeals to you. I think as it is a student award, I think it's not unreasonable for you to kind of not know exactly where your career is going to be going in 10 years time. But I think you need to be doing more than saying, I want to work in human rights or I want to work in international law. I think you need to be a little bit more specific about particular issues or particular career path that you want. So I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, that's what I'd say to that.
Great, thank you, Ruth. Just a few other questions coming in here. Can you apply for more than one program or award? Typically, you would apply to just either the all disciplines or the sponsored award. You won't be considered for a sponsored award if you're applying to the all disciplines grouping. And then if you are applying to one of the specific LLM programs, do you need to apply to the university separately? I think our program manager and Emma can speak more about the specifics for the LLMs.
Yeah, for the LLMs, yeah, exactly. If you're applying to a sponsored LLM like Ruth to the Notre Dame, or if you're choosing one in a completely different university, a host institution of your choice anywhere in the States, you would be applying in parallel usually. So you'd be preparing your application for the LLM course, and you'd be submitting that to your host institution of choice, and you'd also be preparing your Fulbright application. So sometimes, I'm not sure, Ruth maybe can touch on it as well, but you know, some of the essays you're writing might cross over, you know, so when you're thinking about one, you can be using similar materials for the other, because it's the same plan really, essentially. There's a few different elements to each, obviously, but you know, a lot of it you'd be using similar narrative, I suppose, for both applications.
Yeah, I think that's true. Certainly when I was applying, a lot of work goes into the Fulbright application for everyone, obviously, but the application to Notre Dame specifically was a lot lighter because I already had my plan in place, and you can kind of not recycle, obviously, not copy and paste, but you already know what you're doing, and it's not quite as involved an application process as Fulbright, I think. So once you've done the Fulbright, that's quite straightforward.
And it's also important to note that for those sponsored awards, whether it's the LLM or the EPA or GSI sponsored awards, we have flyers on our website for each of them, and some of them, like the Creative Ireland Awards as well, would require you to get to make contact with your host institution first, even to get a letter of affiliation, which typically for the all discipline awards is not required by our application deadline. It's always a good idea to reach out and make those connections and show that your host institution is enthusiastic about you coming, whether that's for you know, a course or for research. But for some specific sponsored awards, you'll see on the flyers on our website that you do need to seek that out in advance of our 2nd of November deadline. So please do read the materials carefully on that.
Then there's just one other question that I see come in here. Are there any LLM scholarships available that are not specific to a certain university? And our commission would have our partnerships with the LLMs from the universities there that we've listed. The all discipline awards would be more for specific research or a taught program that you'd be looking at, but those LLMs are the ones that we have listed there, as well as on our website.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And it is open to this year. In the past, it's been restricted to sponsored awards, but for the LLMs, but it's open to any LLM you want to apply for at the moment. So if you want to go somewhere outside of Notre Dame, Maurer, or Penn, you can apply to whatever course you like. It's just important, I suppose, to bear in mind that, you know, the course fees and all of that kind of stuff, if you're not getting a tuition waiver, from one of our sponsored awardees or award partners even. Yep.
Just a question then, if there's none coming at the moment, I was thinking to talk to our speakers a little bit more about the kind of cultural exchange aspect, which speaking specifically with the law and social science field. I know, Orla, you touched a little bit on the thinking between Europe versus how it's received in the US. And Brenda, you talked about the what you found in your American colleagues. Just if anyone would be interested in speaking more about maybe what surprised you or what you found challenging coming from where you are positioned now, what was that experience like in the field? I think you just have to unmute.
Just to say, I didn't really find any challenges per se, other than one of the things I didn't mention as a tip, and it has been mentioned, and I would really reiterate it, is you know, this is an incredible opportunity, but it's all up to you. So you have to do the groundwork. And I think some of the things that Ruth mentioned about the particular institution she went to having quite a strong Fulbright community there, that may not always be the case. So you know, you need to investigate that. But one thing I would say is when you reach out, and here's a cultural thing, to people in America, and Ruth or Orla indicated this a little bit as well, you know, the response you get is always, you know, phenomenally positive. I mean, I think that's our kind of go-to stereotype of America. You know, it's very positive. You know, everyone wants to see you and hello and all of this. And so reaching out over there is, you know, the go-to way to approach it and to say yes to opportunities. So, you know, you need to do that. You need to be a little bit creative, maybe in thinking, especially maybe in the current moment, about who you can contact and why, and spend a good bit of time setting up what you're going to do in the first week and the first month, when if you're not necessarily doing a program, you know, you might be you know, having to figure out what to do all by yourself. So to dig some foundations beforehand in terms of networking. I mean, it's a cultural opportunity in terms of networking too. And as I say, Americans respond very well to reaching out. So do that as much as you can. But I only found it a positive thing. As I said, for me, the opportunity to go to a school and a department that was working on issues that I'm working on, rather than me being a lone person in one particular institution that might find another one in another institution, that was just fantastic. And as I said, I particularly was perhaps surprised at the extent to which, you know, people were really concerned about the social value of the work, about the ethical implications of their work. I knew that was going to happen, but to be actually embedded in schools and departments that were really focused on that, it was really, really energizing for me, and it's remained with me, as I mentioned. So that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you, Brenda.
On that as well, just for the people who are interested in the LLM programs, one of the great things about the LLMs is that you have the Fulbright, at least in Notre Dame, there was quite a strong Fulbright community. Then within the LLM class, you get a cultural exchange with people who are coming to America from all over the world, particularly, I think, at least in the human rights program, and I think on the general LLM program in Notre Dame as well, it's not primarily US students that are on them. It's a lot of people coming from all over the place on Fulbright or otherwise, but you're also situated within the law school. So you'll also be getting in touch with American law students and having classes with them, people who are doing their JDs in the law school. The challenge that comes with that is that I think the approach to teaching, and this is both a challenge and benefit really, the approach to teaching in US law schools is quite different to how it might be if you've done a law degree at undergrad level in Ireland. It is much more challenging in the sense that the lectures are all approached much more as a conversation between the professor and the students, and between different students themselves. So every class that you go into, you're going to be expected to be engaging and talking throughout it. It's not, you don't kind of get to sit in a lecture hall and listen. You're much more supposed to be engaging with the material, which is you know, really, really useful as a learning experience, but it might take a little bit of adjusting to if you're more used to studying law in Ireland.
Thank you, Ruth. Don't think we have any more questions coming in at the moment, so perhaps may close here unless our speakers have any other things they'd like to share at the moment. All set? Okay, wonderful. So I think we'll finish here for today. And just to wrap up, I'd like to extend a sincerest thanks to all of our speakers today, Ruth, Brenda, Orla, Emma, and Sonia for joining us as well, and to all of our attendees. Thank you for tuning in today. And just a reminder that there are a number of webinars like these to watch back on our Fulbright Ireland YouTube channel for more information and alumni insights. And lastly, just to encourage you to register on our website for the Irish Awards application process webinar scheduled for 1 p.m. on the 17th of September. And if there's any questions you didn't get a chance to ask today or think of later on, you're welcome to email awards@fulbright.ie and we will be in touch. And thank you so much again to all of our speakers generously sharing with us and to our participants today. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.